Hi everyone, and thanks for joining me today. It's the day after sentencing. It's the day after we got some answers. It's the day after those three beautiful girls got justice. And I just wanted to start with me saying my heart goes out to all the families of those girls. I've struggled to listen to it at times, and so I didn't really want to make too many comments. But some of the things I've heard and seen, it doesn't bear thinking about. So I wanted to start by saying my heart goes out to those girls. Rest in peace. And to all the families and all the girls that were injured as well. I'm sorry this had to happen to you. I'm sorry this keeps happening in this country. And I hope that you recover mentally, physically, and that you get the help you deserve and the help you need. Because so much is being made about that monster. I don't really want to say his name, to be honest. He's getting all the publicity he needs. This is what he wanted. And I've been guilty of it as well. I've been guilty of just keep putting his picture out there, when really the focus should have been on the girl. So I wanted to start this interview with my heartfelt condolences and my thoughts and my prayers to go out with everybody involved in this terrible incident. Now, I'm talking to a guy called James Goddard today. I'm pretty sure most of my followers will know him. We both think along the same sort of lines. James might have different views to what I have. So I'm going to bring him in and we can say hello and then we can start this off. James, how are we doing?
Oh, good. Thank you, mate. Yeah, I just want to follow on from what you were saying about Southport. And I think you made a very valid point. Everybody, myself included, people are so focused on getting his name and his picture out there. Some people, not intentionally, of course, but some people might not have focused as much attention on the actual victims. And reading those impact statements yesterday was just absolutely heartbreaking, and finding out what he actually did to those beautiful little girls who tried to behead them. BB King was stabbed 122 times. Elsie was stabbed 85 times. Sorry, it's quite difficult because when you're reading it, I'd read it yesterday, and it upset me, it angered me as well. I mean, I've got a 3-year-old son, and it just made me think, what would I do if it had happened to him? And I just can't believe we've got that kind of evil that are, walking around the UK. And I guess it's the response of the state that's really angered a lot of people. Like they're trying to take us for idiots, like the Amazon killer. Like, it's funny, isn't it? When he pleads guilty, then the very next day, all of the papers go with pretty much the same front page headline, which is the Amazon killer, and they're blaming Amazon for using a knife when he could have picked up a knife anyway. He could have got it from his mum's kitchen. He could have got one from the shop. But yeah, what he did on July the 29th last year was an unspeakable act of violence. I personally, 52 years, there's still the possibility of him coming out of prison at the age of 70. And I don't think that should be allowed to happen. Ultimately, he's destroyed 3 families. He's injured many more children that he tried to kill as well. It was just a stabbing frenzy, and those children that survived are lucky to be alive. And like you said, I just hope that they're able to recover from it mentally, because I can imagine an incident like that would stay with you for the rest of your life, and I can imagine that it would cause things like PTSD, as well as other issues as well. So yeah, let's hope that they all make a full recovery in that regard, mate.
They've got a long road ahead, and I was speaking to somebody yesterday on X who actually has relatives that are one of the girls that got stabbed, and the question I asked was just how much help are these families getting from the government? It would be interesting to hear. She didn't get back to me, but that's one of the questions I had was, are these girls getting help from the government? Are they helping them through this, or are they just being left to their own devices? You touched there, James, on the sentencing of 52 years. Now, this was one of the questions I was going to ask you. I was having many debates yesterday about the sentence and talking about the death penalty. Now, my view is that he is prime for the death penalty. I'm a Christian boy, so I shouldn't really be thinking like that. But I asked the question, you've got a choice of keeping this monster in jail for 52 years minimum at an extortionate cost every year, feeding him 3 times a day, putting a roof over his head, and I guarantee he will not get seen by another inmate throughout, because he's that high profile. He will be in segregation, he will get exercise, etc. What's your view on that, about the sentence and bringing back the death penalty?
I personally believe that the death penalty should be brought back into the UK. I believe that abolishing the death penalty, basically, it opened up a whole new wave of violence, really, because people could murder someone without the thought of being killed themselves. And I think there has to be an ultimate deterrent. Like I said, 52 years in prison. I think if we work out that he will cost a minimum of £40,000 a year while he's in prison, 50 times 40,000, you're looking at 2 million. This is over the course of his sentence. That's just on obviously housing him and feeding him. And then it just doesn't seem right that he'd be given 3 meals a day. He'll be sat in a custody cell. He'll have the TV. He'll have a computer, and yet the families are suffering. I think there has to be changes in the legislation where if somebody harms a child, then it's an automatic death penalty. Like that, I think that has to be brought in. But I also believe at the same time that if we hadn't have opened the doors to mass migration from third world countries, then we wouldn't be seeing half of the problems that we see today. So I do believe that remigration would solve a lot of those issues as well. But I think we also need to be creating an environment where migrants in particular and foreigners, that they are scared to commit crime, because we're advertising ourselves as a country where basically, look, you can come here, you can rape little children, and we'll just let you free. We're not even going to send you to prison. So that's something that needs to change, because they all see Britain as a soft touch. And that I think in regards to the sentencing, the fact that it was the premeditation of it, the planning, the fact that he targeted the most innocent of people, really, little girls listening and singing along to Taylor Swift songs, like absolutely no threat to anybody. And he chose to end their lives in the most horrific of ways. So for me, he should never see the light of day again. But then again, at the same time, the taxpayers shouldn't have to pick up the cost of housing and feeding him for the next 52 years. For me, that would be his ancestral homeland of Rwanda. Obviously, the UK gave his mum and dad refuge, and it's believed that his dad he had something to do with the genocide that took place in Rwanda. And then I've had people say to me as well that the Rwandan authorities had actually tried to extradite his father back to the UK, back to Rwanda, sorry, but the UK government had blocked it. So for me, yeah, he should be in prison, but we should be billing Rwanda for the cost. And it's just, like I said, it's just a kick in the teeth. You open the doors and you help people, and they repay you by producing a son that goes on to commit mass murder. And just finally, don't tell me for a second that they didn't know what he was doing, because his father had stopped him from an attack at a school prior to the Southport attack. So why didn't he tell the authorities then that, because that could have potentially stopped him. But then again, we know what Prevent are like. They disproportionately target people like me and yourself included, whilst ignoring the real threat. And then people like him go under the radar. And we've had 3 children that have been murdered and many more injured. So there has to be a deterrent in the sentence, and it has to be proper, but it also has to be fair to the taxpayer at the same time as well, I believe.
I agree with everything you say, and I think that's what is angering people, is the fact that this didn't have to happen. This could have been prevented. The warning signs were there. I think it's absolutely crazy that he's been allowed to do this, knowing what. And let's face it, James. We still don't know everything. I'm pretty certain we don't know everything. I think there's more to this than meets the eye, and I think that's what people are angry about, if I'm honest. And I just think that everything the government's done is to save their own necks and to stop any civil unrest. I've had many arguments about is that monster Welsh. Now, here's my view, and then I'll get your view as well. He's as much Welsh as I am Indian. Yes, he was born in Wales. Yes, from birth. So therefore, he is a British citizen. He is not a Welsh choir boy. He's got 2 Rwandan parents. He is Rwandan. Now, what's your take on this? Because I mean, I've argued with my own parents about it. They go, no, he was Welsh. He's not in my eyes, and nothing can persuade me otherwise than that. What's your take on it, please?
Yeah, he's most definitely not Welsh. This is this is the argument I have a lot with people, and it's frustrating because they just shout you down with buzzwords. And it's like, look, at the end of the day, his parents are from Rwanda. He was born here. He's got a British passport, but his heritage, his ethnicity is Rwandan. He's not a Welsh choir boy, for a start. And this is the problem with citizenship, just giving citizenship out willy-nilly, and the fact that there's people in this country that believe that, you know, because it's so silly, the fact that somebody could come over from Sudan and then in 5 years' time they'll be eligible to be British, and they're just as British as me and you. They have the same rights as we do, even though they've got no history and no connection to the land, which I find to be truly appalling. But I mean, I live in Thailand at the moment as well, and it's actually it's quite funny. If you have a child here, say myself and my partner had a child, obviously the child would be English. On the birth certificate, it says in big red letters, not Thai. But that's how it should be, because each country should have their own right to self-determination, and their people should have their own right to exist. And this is something that's at risk in Britain, is the fact that it's very misleading to say that these people are British, and you only have to look at the way that they presented him in the media, using the school pictures of him to try and keep up this facade of, oh look, he's just a quiet little choir boy, when he was anything just that. And the reports from his previous school friends as well say a lot, that it wasn't the first time that he'd been caught over 10 times carrying a knife. So yeah, he's not British by any stretch of the imagination. And I personally believe as well that we should have a one strike and you're out policy in regards to foreigners that commit crimes. So if you commit a crime, no matter how small it is, then no, your visa's revoked and you're out the door. That then would create a deterrent, and then we would start to get the best of the best coming in, because people that didn't want to break the law, that wanted to contribute positively, would be. And I think most people would be happy with that. I mean, obviously we know current immigration levels are too high, and they have been too high for too long. But I think people would be happier if the migrants or the people that were coming in weren't reliant on the state, because we're spending billions of pounds on housing people and feeding people that are going to the front of the queue ahead of people that have been on council waiting lists for 5 to 10 years. So it's absolutely atrocious.
Yeah, another one of the debates, if you like, that I was having yesterday was it's not really an argument in my eyes, but an argument of, was it a terrorist attack or was it terror? And I was just shocked at how many people are saying it wasn't terror, and even to the point of arguing about it. And I know it's people to the left, etc., etc. But going into a dance class, murdering 3 kids. Let's face it. If he could have, he would have killed them all. He would have killed them all. Now, you go and ask those parents and the families of those victims whether it was a terror attack, and I know what they think, because I'm in contact with a family, which I'm not going to discuss, but they believe it to be a terror attack, and people still have the gall and the to argue that it wasn't terror. And my first question to them is, why would you even argue it anyway? And 2, what do you constitute for terror? So in your eyes, I know what you're going to say, because you're of sane mind. Terror, right? Hello? Can you hear me, mate?
Are we there? Sorry, I think I'm having problems with the internet connection, mate. So did you want I'm guessing, was the question about, do I think the incident was terror related?
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, 100% it was terror related, for 2 reasons. First of all, Okay, let's look at what the police found at the property. He was making enough ricin to kill 12,500 people. He was also in possession of an Al Qaeda training manual. In Belmarsh prison, he's been spotted attending the mosque. So to me, you add them all together. He's converted to Islam, and he's then got extreme, followed the path of jihad, and then committed unspeakable acts of violence against little children. And it was terror related because he chose to target the most innocent people in society, to interpret the way he looks at the world. But most definitely it was a terror attack. I would even say it was an anti-white attack as well, really, because he's been on record as saying things to do, researching things to do with genocide and stuff like that. So yeah, I believe it was definitely an act of terror against 3 little children. And it also, many more, sorry, but it reminds me of the case of Josh, Harry and George from 2018. They were 3 boys that were making their way to a friend's birthday party when they were deliberately mowed down and murdered. And it was covered up by the British state. They put the driver on the wrong charge. And that was deemed that it wasn't terror related straight away, even though it was, because the collision report states that the driver never lost control of the vehicle. So even when there are terror attacks that are taking place in the UK now, they're just being covered up, which is something that, again, anybody that's involved in the cover up of terror attacks, I think, should be held accountable. They should be arrested and they should be facing jail, in particularly Keir Starmer and Yvette Cooper, because withholding the information, they created a vacuum online where all this information was going around. So basically, Axel, whatever his name is, I don't want to say his full name, him, Yvette Cooper and Keir Starmer, they're the ones that fueled the riots, because if he hadn't murdered little children and they hadn't covered it up, I mean, can you imagine what it had been like if people had have known the truth there and then? I don't think the protests would have stopped if people knew what he did there and then. That's why they covered it up, in my opinion.
100% there was a cover up, and I still believe that they're covering it up even now. Where do you? Now, my point is, people are quite rightly pointing out that Labour was only in power for a matter of weeks before when this took place, and these 3 prevent referrals were under the Tories' watch. Now, I personally, I blame everybody really, but the one thing that people are angry about, and one thing I'm angry about, because it was quite personal to me, I got sent to prison for speaking out and saying certain things on this platform, is the way that he came out. And I mean, people call it the Farage riots, and I think that's so far from the truth, it's unreal. I think they're actually the Starmer riots, because like you say, there was a cover up then, and I still think there's a cover up now. Where do you apportion the blame?
Yeah, there's definitely a cover up. I think the blame's got to fall at the feet of the regime. I know the police come out and say they were gagged by the CPS, but they're not usually gagged by the CPS, and they're able to disclose things about suspects, people that have been arrested. There was a cover up from start to finish. And in fact, Keir Starmer knew when people were being jailed, such as yourself, for nothing, by the way. You didn't deserve to go to prison. And you didn't deserve what happened to you. And I'm so pleased that you fought it in court and you won, because now you've been well and truly vindicated. And I'm sure you're angry as well, because now you know for sure that you should never have spent any time in prison. So yeah, I think Keir Starmer, as I said, the Labour regime, because they knew the details straight away. And also I'd like to say, because there was a lot of talk of political commentators and saying, "Oh, with the information we've got, this will bring down Starmer," and it turns out that it's nothing. There was no information other than the fact that he was referred to prevent 3 times. So yeah, like I said, Keir Starmer and his regime most definitely are to blame. In terms of overall long term, it comes down to mass migration and opening up the doors to anybody and everybody. And like I said, it's just heartbreaking to know that those 3 families will never be the same again. I don't know how anybody could recover from their child being murdered, and especially in the circumstances of it was like 85 times, 122 times. That is a level of evil that I don't think we've seen in the UK ever before.
No, the sad
It was
thing
a
is,
15-minute attack. It was evil.
yeah, the sad thing is that it won't be the last, because I don't see how we change this in the short term. You know that we've got Labour in charge for a period of 4 years. The borders are more open than what they've ever been. They are giving asylum to hundreds and hundreds of immigrants every day, and there is no deterrent at the minute. So what do we do in the short term? I know long term that we need to elect a different party other than the two-party system. We need to leave the ECHR. We need to leave WHO and WEF, and we need to stop doing Brexit properly. But what do we do in the short term?
The short term should be focused on, we need to get political representation. So again, I suppose it depends where you sit on the political spectrum. For me, the most important thing is to stop the demographic clock, which we don't have a lot of time to do, to stop British people becoming a minority, because the way that we're treated now as a majority is truly horrifying. I really don't want to think what it'd be like when we become a despised minority in our own homeland. So I think short-term activists and people that post online, we should be pushing the message of remigration and mass deportations. I mean, you've already got Rupert Lowe from Reform speak. I mean, it's so refreshing to go on his X feed and see he's basically championing the talking points that many of us have been saying for years. So to have a mainstream politician that's actually saying that is absolutely fantastic. I just hope that he's able to influence Farage, because Farage doesn't seem to be as down the line as Rupert is, and that's something that needs addressing, because there does have to be mass deportations. We need to, I mean, you know, there's 600,000 illegals in London alone. So imagine how many there are throughout the country, and don't tell me that the airlines won't be incentivized to start flying these people back to their destinations and where they come from, because they'll be making money on it as well. But yeah, 100%, there has to be a policy of remigration straight away. You could even say you start with the illegals that have committed crime, and then obviously people that are in the prison.
Yeah, surely the cost of sending these illegals home or away far outweighs the cost of keeping them here. You know, it just baffles me. I just think that we are going to have to suck it up for another period of time, and we're going to see a few more, if not loads more, of these things. I mean, even yesterday, as it was all going on, there was a stabbing in London. I think 5 people. There was a separate one with 4 people. You got the Plymouth stabber as well. Now that is a white guy, but colour shouldn't come into it. A killer is a killer. A terrorist is a terrorist. So it's difficult. It's difficult to know what to do and what to do in the short term. But why is it so hard for us to do anything, really? And it brings me on to my next topic I wanted to discuss with you, which is Trump. He's come into office and he's signed order after order after order to do what he said he was going to do. And yes, he might find it difficult. It's not just a case of signing a bit of paper and it's going to stop. But he has the intentions to start putting things right. I can't see it happening under Labour. I think the only people that we could get similar sort of thing would be Reform or one of the other right-wing parties. Trump, your opinion on Donald Trump, firstly. Can you hear me, mate? Can't hear you. Can you take your mute off, mate?
Hear me? Is that better? Yeah, sorry, mate. Sorry, I'm a bit of a tech tard. I think in regards to America and Trump, they seem to be on a different path to us. They seem to be further ahead, if you know what I mean. Like, after everything that we saw last year, the country then elected the far left Labour Party as the government. It's very strange because of the reactions of everything that had taken place. I mean, you look at Europe, for instance, Austria, Belgium, Holland, France, all of them are steering to the right. And then in the UK, it's like we've gone back to basics. We've gone back to Labour again. And the problem is, what people need to understand is Keir Starmer is a narcissist. He's not going to leave. He's not going to resign, and he's not going to call it a general election early. And he's going to do everything he can now to try and remain in power, whether that's giving the vote to foreign nationals and people that are age 16. He's going to do whatever it takes to stay in power. I think in regards to winning a general election, I mean, reform out of all, I mean, I don't trust any of the political parties, but out of all of them, obviously, they'd be the ones that I'd say, vote for. For me, they just don't go far enough on the issues that are most important to me, and I think to the wider population itself. I think Nigel underestimates how important mass deportations are and just how angry people are with immigration in general. I mean, there was a poll that came out the other week that even shocked Labour, and that was that I think it was like 60 or 70% of its Labour voters supported the death penalty for the Pakistani rape gangs, which is obviously something that Labour would disagree with. So I think everyone's fed up to the back teeth of immigration because it's pushed rental prices up. People can't buy a house. You struggle to get a doctor's appointment at your GP surgery. The cost of living itself has gone through the roof. There's obviously more competition for lower skilled jobs, so that creates problems. And overall, it's not been a net positive for the British people. Like I said, I'm in a country, Thailand. I can't work here unless I set up my own business, because they've got everything. They've got laws in place that protect their people, and that's exactly how it should be. We're not saying that people can't come to the UK. It's just we have to have our own house sorted out first. But finally, in regards to winning an election, I'd even go so far as say I could see some sort of pact coming between Reform and the Tories, and I think if that happens, then none of the problems will get fixed. And I think the problem is that the general population has a short memory. We forget things that have happened, and we're too forgiving, personally, but that's just my thoughts.
Yeah, that's one thing. I talked to my wife about it. I said, the one thing I think Keir Starmer is banking on is that the next general election is going to be in 4 years. He's not going to call one before then. Quite rightly, you say that. He's a narcissistic socialist dictator. So that's not going to happen. So he's banking on get all the crap out the way first. Let's, do what we need to do. We might be a bit of there might be a bit of animosity to start with, but ultimately the next general election will be in 4 years' time. If we can start there and that's the thing that worries me. However, having said that, I think the start that they've had and things that have happened under their watch so far, I don't think it will be forgotten. You are quite right. We are a forgiving nation and we do easily forget. But I think this one's a bit deeper than that. So it's just like you say, can Reform do it on their own? Possibly not. And if they unite with Tories, are we going to see what we want to see? Now, that before I got sent to prison, I talked and I posted in a certain way. And since coming out of prison, I'm a bit more reserved with what I say for obvious reasons. But last few days, I'm thinking to hell with that, and we need people like me, like you, and other right-wing viewed people that actually talk and say what needs to be said. Immigration is the number one thing in the UK that people are interested in because it affects everything. It affects everything. It affects our hospitals, doctor's appointments, housing, everything. So I'm now on the mindset, deport, and radically change our immigration system. And we have to stop these boats. This is a long-term thing, and it's not going to be done quickly. But it's like when you think of Trump, day one, he's signing orders to put troops down on the border, to start building the wall again, to start doing this. It's instant. I just don't think that there's anybody in government at the minute that is that way of thinking. So it's going to be a hard few years to get through. And I think you're in the right place at the minute, mate, to be fair, because if I could, I'd move. Because it's I said to you yesterday in messages, it's like the Bronx here. and my wife doesn't feel safe anymore. She's South African, and she comes from a real rough area there where there's a lot of racism and there's a lot of death and whatever. And it's actually a better option to live there now than what it is to live here. So what's your thought on Elon Musk? I wanted to get that view of you, because he's obviously got a big say in American politics at the moment. Has he brought his way in? Possibly. And he is having a lot to say about what goes on here. I mean, he went on a rant for 3 or 4 days, which I loved, by the way, with him telling truths about Keir Starmer. But is he a good thing? Is he a bad thing? What's your thoughts on Elon Musk?
Elon, I think it's been, I think what he's done to British politics has been well needed. He's managed to shine a light, especially on the rape gang issue. Obviously, we all know that that's been going on for years. It's still going on now. But to have the exposure that he gives it, which I'm sure the victims would have been incredibly happy with, because it gives them an opportunity to get their story out. I believe that he's gone after Starmer and the UK government simply for the fact of how they were trying to interfere in the US election. Obviously, Labour were trying to send 100 staff members to go to the key battleground swing states to tip the election result in favour of Kamala Harris. So Trump's ever going to forget that, and I think Starmer's delusional if he thinks he's ever going to be able to get a working relationship with Trump, because he's not going to forget what they tried to do to him. For me, like I'm saying, Elon's not perfect. I do doubt people that want to put a brain chip, a chip inside of people's brains. For me, that's a bit off. But other than that, yeah, to hear him speak so passionately about Onyx in particular, about British politics, can only be a positive, because it means more people are finding out about what's going on in the UK. Because a lot of people have got this weird perception where they think the UK is like this paradise, this perfect little quaint country with quiet little villages, and it's beautiful. And the facts are that the UK, in particularly over the last 10 years, has transformed into a third world hellhole, cesspit of violence in every major city. There's, all of the violent crime statistics are through the roof. So yeah, it's important people like Elon continue to highlight our suffering.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. It's just, what do we do? What do we do? We've got Khan, who's running the city, who's running London. Knife crimes through the roof. He just doesn't seem bothered. And his rhetoric when he's actually speaking on social media platforms, I don't know if you've seen it, it's very anti-white, etc., etc. Now, and this is from everybody that's on the left or from that demographic. The attacks are from them and not from the right to them. It's always them saying that we're racist and we're the other. He's a terrible human being, Khan, and I think it's his fault only that London is in the state that it's in. But again, how do we remove somebody like Khan from London when he has got the lion's share of people that will vote for him no matter what?
Well, that's the problem, isn't it? The demographics in London aren't on our side, which is the issue. He's elected in on the Muslim bloc vote, but I wouldn't be surprised if there was some election meddling in it. I mean, you only have to look at the Tower Hamlets, and it was Mr. Rahman, and there were Labour politicians that were involved in election fraud there. The fact is, though, he's won three elections. He's been mayor of London for a long time now, and quite rightly, as you said, he's oversaw the destruction of it. Obviously, it wasn't the best when he came into power, but he certainly just made it worse. Like he's launched initiatives like Muslim-only housing associations, and basically every other culture and people are celebrated more than our own. But what's quite surprising is there's a lot of Muslims that don't like Khan because they believe he's too liberal, he's too secular. I mean, you only have to see his views on transgenderism, changing the traffic lights in London to the trans symbol, the LGBT flags that are all over the place so yeah, he's done a lot of damage, but I think it's just become knife crime capital. I mean, you had this mass stabbing yesterday of 4 people in Beddington, South London. There's multiple stabbings each week. People are getting raped. People are getting murdered. It's not really an example that we want to give to the rest of the world. Like, hey, look at our capital city. You're going to come here, but there's a high chance you're going to get robbed, stabbed, and murdered. Again, how do we address that with remigration? But like I said, when you've got 600,000 illegal migrants in your capital city, that's a major issue, especially when they're committing crime as well. So, yeah, I think Ant Middleton standing is a good idea. I'd love it. I'd love to see him win and become mayor over Sadiq Khan, obviously, any day of the week. I just don't know whether he'll be able to do it with the demographic continuing to shift in Khan's favor. Do you know what I mean? Because they're not gonna vote for any. They'll vote for the Imam tells them to vote for, which is obviously why Labour have hoarded and courted their vote for so many years. So it'd be great to see Ant Middleton win. I just don't know whether he'd be able to unseat Khan. I don't know if I don't, like I said, if the demographics don't change, I can't see it. I can see London just being a Labour city for forever.
Yeah, I agree. There's just too many. There's just too many votes for Khan. So I don't think it matters who comes in. To be honest, I just don't see how short term that they can gather enough support from the wider community when like you say, there's X amount of illegals there. Khan's got that vote nailed in. I'm actually talking to Ant Middleton. I might be interviewing him in a couple of weeks' time as we get down the line a little bit. So it'll be interesting to see how he plans to do it and what he's going to do moving forward. But I'm with you. I can't see how it changes with the demographic, and that's countrywide as well. And that's the thing that's worrying me, is that Labour seem to be importing their votes and banking on this demographic winning them the next general election. And that is why I believe we've got one opportunity and one opportunity only to make a stand, to vote, to canvass, to go on rallies, to take the streets. We've got one opportunity, and that's in these next few years and the next general election to sort it out, because otherwise I think we're going to be lost for many, many years after that. Do you think?
Can you repeat that last bit, mate?
Yeah, I was just saying, James, I think Labour are counting on the fact that the demographic of the people that are voting for them is just going to increase over the next few years. Khan's got London nailed in. He's got that vote. The further we go on, the more illegal immigrants and immigrants that we bring in, the higher the vote count for Labour. And I was just saying, I think we've got one opportunity and one opportunity only to sort this out, and that's going to be the next general election. But it's going to take hard work to do that. We need people like Ant Middleton standing. We need people like Charlie Mullins standing. People might not like him, but he's got a following. People know him. Suella Braverman coming over, things like that. We've got one opportunity to put this right, and I fear that if we don't do it the next time, this next general election, and we don't take to the streets now, we don't canvass now, we don't shout and scream from the rooftops that we want change, that if it doesn't happen in the next general election, we could be lost for years and years and years. Is that the way you look at it? Can you hear me, mate? Oh, sorry, while he's just trying to get back on there, I will chat to you myself, just while we wait for James. So, as I was saying, and I would like your opinion on this, to be honest, anybody that's listening. Do you feel the same? Do you think that we've only got one opportunity? Do you think it all has to be done in these next few years, or is it going to be steady? I just feel, guys, that if we don't make a stand now, we don't take to the streets, we don't raise our voices, we don't stamp our feet, we don't go on rallies, we don't champion people that are going to stand for reform or whoever it might be, that if we don't get it right this next time, then we're just not going to get it right at all. It'll be interesting to know what you say about that, because it concerns me. It concerns me that if we don't get this two-party and Labour out at the next general election, that we're going to be stuck with them for a long time. And that's a worry for me. And it'd be interesting to know what you guys feel on that. Listen, James is having technical issues. We've been going 45 minutes anyway. We pretty much asked him all I wanted to ask him anyway. I was just going to touch on Israel and Gaza. And I was just going to ask him, will the truce last? You know, we're expecting some more hostages released tomorrow. So it'd be nice to hear your views on that. And maybe I can pick that up in the comments and we can have our own little discussion on that. I think the main thing to take away from today was it was important we talked about Southport. It was important we talked about the girls. It was important we talked about the failings of authorities. It was important that we held people to account for that. I wanted to get my message across to you guys of what I'm thinking and feeling, because after today, I don't really want to talk about it, if I'm honest. I always plan to talk about it in this interview, and then try not to talk about it again, because this is what Axel wants. This is what that monster wants. And I just think the notoriety is what he's craving. And I just think it's time for people to stop now, stop talking about him, and just draw a line under it and just put those girls in your prayers. James is back. So let me just see if I can bring him back on. Let me see if he's sorted his issues out, and then we can finish things off with him. James, can you hear me? Just give him a few seconds. If not, we'll conclude there. And coming up on Question by Mark next week, we've got David Atherton, and we've got Johnny United, left versus right. It should be a cracker. These two have previous. They've done quite a few battles over the years. They've done Spaces not only a few days ago as well, which was quite lively. So I'm looking forward to that one next week. And then we've got the rally next weekend on the 1st of February. I will be going to that. I've been lucky enough to get a pass to go backstage. So hopefully I can make some contacts there, and we can bring them to this podcast, and we can do some more good interviews. But I will be reporting live from the event. I would say this: if you can get there tomorrow, then please get there, because we need numbers, we need loud voices, we need to make a stand now more than ever. I know it's about Tommy, and it's about political prisoners, and to free him. 100%. That's why I'm going. But also, we've got an opportunity to scream and shout at the top of our voices about our displeasure of what's going on with the UK at the moment. But I will advise this: don't cause any trouble. Don't make a nuisance of yourself. I've seen posters of lefty loonies saying that they want to come and disrupt what's going on. Don't take the bait, because this is what they want. They want us to react. They want us to get violent so that they can paint this pretty picture of us, which just isn't true. So have your phones with you. Make sure you're recording if anything goes down, so that there's evidence to say that, you know, we didn't start this, and hopefully it can go off without any issues at all. But please get there if you can. It's one day of your life where you can come and make sure you can be heard. Let's make this the biggest one yet. I've been to 2 now. I think this will be my 3rd one. Let's make a noise. Let's gather. Let's vent, but do it in a way where we're shone in a good light. Listen, James seems like he's having issues, so I am going to leave it there. I'd love to hear what you think about the interview in the comments. And then I look forward to next week's with David Atherton and Johnny. So until then, I will speak to you later. Cheers, guys.